to a Gallagher party. If those of you don't know who Gallagher, some of you younger people, you can Google that later. It's this wild, yeah, the sledgehammer and the watermelon, but apparently the folks at the Quail Hollow thought that was inappropriate.
There wasn't enough like plastic to put around.
Yeah. Well, Barb, you kind of stole my thunder there. Neighbors bring food with death and flowers with sickness and little things in between. And the other quote from that is, Boo was our neighbor. He gave us 2 soap dolls, a broken watch and chain, a pair of good luck pennies in our lives, but neighbors give in return. We never put back in the tree what we took out of it. We had given him nothing, and it made me sad. Well, I'm not sad tonight, but I feel like you guys have given me a lot more than I'm able to give back. That's kind of what teaching is like, right? Some days you get more out of it. Am I allowed to do this?
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna go blind.
And really, tonight I want to make all about you guys, not me. I wrote this a while ago one day, and I couldn't read my writing.
Tim, hold it up.
Hold it up?
Yeah.
How many of you
There
have
we
had trouble
go.
reading my writing over the years? Teaching is not a solitary job. The things you all, or you, Barb, talked about tonight.
Hold it up.
Because so many of you stood and delivered. You helped, you prodded, you told me what would work, what would not. And we all know what Barb said to me. More on that later. But
Dad, talk
tonight,
into the microphone.
into the microphone.
Into the microphone, so everyone can hear.
You told me there would be a young lady here to hold it. I guess that didn't.
Julie?
Today I feel like the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Look at these grand men and women. A full house here. Which of you wouldn't consider it the highlight of your career just to associate with them for even one day? Where's that quote from? All right, you young folks got to look that up tonight. And one of my favorite movies, it's not a great movie, Barb, but I enjoy it,
You
is
know, it's all right. You don't
Hitch
have to agree on everything.
with Will Smith and the great Kevin,
Bacon?
the big guy, Kevin James. And Will Smith said, life is not the amount of breaths you take, it's the moments that take your breath away. And tonight's one of those. So thank all of you. And then my last quote, and then I'll sit down. How many of you believe that? For a while, and Kim Haddon was delighted at this, I was a fan of country music. It happened the summer my dad passed away, and I was in my classroom, and the custodians had left on CMT. In those days, we had a big television in our room. Do those even work anymore? Could someone make a list of that? What works and what doesn't? Is this light recording me, or? And my dad had passed away in June, and this song came on by the great Buddy.
Holly?
No, he's a country singer.
Buddy Jewell?
Buddy Jewell. Thank you. Kelly Murphy, everyone.
Kelly.
And Buddy Jewell won Nashville, but he was an old guy. And that was one of the, Nashville Star didn't have a requirement about age like American Idol does. And the song was Help Pour Out the Rain. It's about a little girl driving with her dad and asking about Grandpa. And I'm like watching this and trying to set up my room and bawling like a baby. So then I became a fan of country music. And how many of you know who Marty Stewart is?
I've heard of
All
him.
right. He was married to Johnny Cash's daughter at one time, right? And he wrote a song called Tip Your Hat, and it pays homage to the old folks like Merle Haggard, Hank Williams, Johnny Cash. None of them could be here tonight. This is a great turnout. One of the lines is, now that's what I'm talking about. Plow that field, plant that seed, rock on, brother, let your roots run deep. Show them what you got, make them all believers. For God's sake, boy, tip your hat to the teacher. So tonight, I tip my hat to you. And speaking of hats, this is just a sample of what I'll be wearing in the future. When you see me, you may not recognize me. Kudos to Kelsey. She bought this tie for me at the Art Institute of Chicago. And the pink shirt's from Old Navy. Jesse, thank you. But in the future, I'm knocking all my teeth out. A grill. I'm pimping. All right? That parking spot, I'm loving it. I'm knocking out all my teeth. I'm getting a grill. What else? I'll travel with an entourage if you want to apply to do that. We have a box over here for that. And I'm pimping my car out too. It's a 2009 Toyota Camry. I'm getting some big, you know what, tires. All right, Barb, you brought up Marty, my dad. He was the best teacher I ever had. There are a lot of great teachers here tonight, but he was the best one. And I don't want to freak anyone out. He's here tonight. And he had a favorite saying. He sold insurance. And I'd walk into Uncle Bill's Giant Tiger Tops with him.
U.S. merchandise. Oh, I forgot.
And
Ben
he'd be
Franklin.
talking to people, and I'd say, Dad, who is that? And he goes, I don't know. and he had a saying, it cost nothing. And by the way, thanks for these. You'll notice every kid says something about how I didn't do their last name the right way. I knew their last name. That was something I learned from you, Jim. And he always, I'm sorry?
Mess it up well.
always believed in me. Never ever forgot to tell me he was proud of me. I was a good teacher, a good father, and that Julie and I were doing a good job. That's Julie Bowens, not Julie Kenny, raising our girls.
Or third.
And he would have loved tonight because of all of you and lots of laughs. And John Greaves, you had a name for him. What was it? The Leprechaun. Okay. By the way, I heard a story about John Greaves. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Michelle, is she here? This bright light. Michelle, Byers, right there. You wore that tonight?
I'm a rebel. I told her at 6:55 this morning, go to Peebles. Where did you go, Walmart?
The subtext there is,
There's a lot.
I learned that word from you, by the way. But Michelle was in labor with Nathan, and she drove to Giago. The name that shall not be spoken drove her. But who followed behind in Michelle's car? John Greaves.
I'm old. Okay.
And he was kind of demanding when you got to the doctor's office. She's in labor, do something. More on John in a moment, but I think, John, you might hold the record tonight. I met you my 4th day of teaching in Chardon in 1978. I have a whole story about that, but you guys aren't interested. You have families, places to go.
Do tell.
What?
Do tell.
We did a workshop, I think at Chardon High School, all about gifted education. Lou Minor was there. All right. Some of you had the privilege to meet my dad. I know Jim did. And some of you only know him through my stories, and if time permitted, I would share some of them with you. But
You're a miniature of it.
that's a big compliment. Thank you. All right. Another person who's not here tonight that John might be the only one who remembers is Paul Burton. And in one of our gatherings like this, he was a guide. Laura Gazdick, everyone. Paul had introduced all the spouses, so I will do that now as best I can. If I forget anyone, we'll go left to right. Nick Cagnati, everyone, Heather's husband.
Nick.
Maybe save for the end.
I'm sorry? Clapping?
Go ahead.
Same thing.
I don't like
And we have Dr. Brian Peppers. Mary Elizabeth. Let's see, at this table, I can't believe it's
He's doing good.
Kathy Francis, everyone. Many stories about Kathy. How many do you want to hear?
Oh, with the spasm. Sorry.
Wait, let me put on my glasses. But, you know, again, talking about teachers, there's a lot of great teachers. Mark McNaughton? He's nice. Kim Haddon, everyone. My bad. Kent's wife.
Kim.
Don't worry, Kim. You're on page 4 at the bottom when we went to Robbins.
Oh my God.
You asked my wife a question before we were even out of the driveway. All right.
Tim, there's no paragraphs.
Okay, there's a lot of great teachers here tonight. A lot of you bring it every single day, but sorry, none of you are as good as my wife. She's the best teacher here tonight, and I didn't even know there was a word to describe what she does till I started teaching at Lakeland, and Kent likes to make fun of me because I'm a professor of education. I couldn't even sit down. Do that thing, Vince. And there's the term for teachers that no matter what group of kids they get, no matter how far below grade level they are, they bring them up, and that's called self-efficacy. And every year my wife does that, and her school has changed a lot. So kudos to you, Julie. And by the way, she's had to listen to a couple stories from me over the years. One night I might have gone on a little too long. And then my daughters, is Shannon there on FaceTime? Oh my goodness, hello. Can you hear me?
I see her. I see her from over here. Hi.
You know, it's a funny thing. Joan Schick, do any of you remember Joan? She was a speech therapist. She told me once you learn from your kids, and I was like, what does that mean? Who would have known? Shannon, my oldest, is 25. Rachel, my colleague, apparently Rachel and Shannon worked together at, that was really on page 6, at Party City while they were both in high school. Neither of them remember each other. What does that say about you young people out there? What are you, too busy? You can't stop to say hi? Huh? Are you reading these? Okay. That was the angry Tim. That was very visible from 2003 to 2008. But let's not get into that. Let's not go down that road. And Shannon lives in Boston. She's a grant writer for the Boys and Girls Club. She works in the nonprofit world. At the microphone. We're very proud of her. I don't know if I should say this right now, but my wife Julie, not Julie Kenny, said, I think the nonprofit world might even pay less than education. She's fighting the good fight and doing great things. She told me not too long ago she wrote a grant to get some musical instruments for her clients, which was pretty cool. Our middle daughter, Kelsey, the redhead, the left hand, down in front. You know, all those things about middle kids, none of those are true. She's a recent graduate of Ashland University. Very recent, worst commencement speech ever. Well, what was the commencement speaker? When I told him that, he said,
I hate that guy. You do? Yes.
And our youngest, Jessie, graduated high school, or will graduate. She finished high school. She finished a long time ago. She just didn't know it. And she will graduate June 8th. I graduate June 6th. She's a valedictorian, by the way, but she's choosing not to speak at commencement because, well, you know, a little bit of me rubbed off. All right, do we have raffle items, Julie, or we didn't do that?
Sure, we do.
All right, so we know Tim likes to talk, but tonight is about you. So I want to just say a couple words about everyone in the room, if that's okay with you. Is that all right? Well, what did you expect? Come on. This is Tim. Amanda Reed. I'm doing this kind of alphabetical, kind of symmetrical. Is that a word, Adrian? I took a thing around the building. That's a good name for a teacher, by the way. Reed, get it? Amanda is very proudly a third-generation teacher, which is kind of cool. Am I breaking something?
I don't know, Julie.
We blow an amp! Remember that, Ken?
I remember that.
You know, this is Tim's night, right? So I don't want to offend anyone, but Amanda insists she's not a blonde, but she didn't know who Billy Joel was. So I got caught out. And I'm glad you're sitting next to Rachel, because I probably shouldn't say this, but Rachel said that kind of made you hard to be her friend that day. But I'm glad you noticed that. And the other Amanda Weaver, had to leave. Something about a guy in the parking lot. kudos to her for earning a full-time position. And she knows my two daughters. They worked at the pool together, so there's some symmetry there. All right, people are already leaving. Wyarski, 451. I don't even remember how that started, but Michelle went into work one day and said to Rosemary, "What do you want?" She said, "What are you talking about? Did I have something to do with it?" I'm trying real hard not to look at you because you cry a lot. And we had a lot of good times at Mini Relay and Relay for Life, especially in the middle of the night. Not doing anything inappropriate, but my goodness, the stories we told and the stories we made up. I think I need my glasses. Is Laura Babick here? Who's going to her party on June? Yeah, that's always a good time, isn't it? And Laura and Nancy and Maria, you guys work with a group of kids that a lot of us will nod at, and maybe not sure what to do next after we see the MH kids. And Nancy was one of my DC buddies. And by the way, Bev and all of you, thank you for letting me do that. When Hershey ended, I cried on Jim's shoulder for a while. He cried on mine. I went over to Ken's house. He said, "What are you doing here?" I knew when that ended. Dr. Jay Taylor, everyone, for those of you who don't know him. I knew I had to go to D.C. Bev made me pay the full price. It's still a deal. Oh my God, this place we went to dinner.
World famous.
That was 1 week ago tonight. Kelly's not listening, right? There may have been a place named the Diamond Lounge next door. The windows might have been black and, to let keep the sun. God bless Vince, he had the spaghetti. He was still when your shoes stick to the ground. Yeah, I'm working the crowd now. But Nancy, Maria, Ruth, Laura, you guys do a great job. And the other Laura Gazdak, I think you and I have worked together almost from the very beginning, maybe before Jim. 83? And you and my wife Julie, not Julie Kenny, attended Slippery Rock State College. Not at the same time, but before it was Slippery Rock University. And Joanne DeShetler, Barb mentioned 227, oddly, or not oddly, Tracy Parabek, I saw her earlier. These bright lights. For some reason, we started talking about 227 this morning. And I was telling Haley, your Haley, Joanne, was in my class that day. And at one point, she broke down pretty good. And, all this other stuff, it's good stuff. But it's the kids. It's not you guys, it's the kids. And Laura Duchamp was right there when Haley lost it for a minute. And I tried to tell her it's okay. Your mom's a teacher. If something had happened, you would have known about it by now. And is it a symmetry, Adria? Well, there's the math teachers. That last class showed me. Haley and Laura were on our bus in D.C. They got to eat at the lovely McGill's, and maybe they chose not to. Top-notch desserts. I was putting soft serve ice cream in my coffee. I'm not responsible for my behavior, but and we were at the Pentagon Memorial on Thursday night. If you've ever been there, it's very moving. There's benches, and if the bench faces out, that means someone died on the plane, and if they face this way, they were in the building. And Haley and Nora were sitting on a bench, and they said, the Holocaust Museum is going to be really sad tomorrow, but it'll be really cool. So that was cool, because our kids, they're great kids. We get mad at them, they do stupid stuff, they walk down the hallway listening to music. Well, you didn't know, Mr. Bones, it's a new rule. Thanks for telling me about that, Rocco. That's really not a new rule, that was Tim being Tim. All right, Laura, Joanne, Melissa. What bus were you, Melissa? Bus 2? I don't know if we dined at McGill's. I might have been in the bathroom throwing up. It really wasn't that bad. Seriously. Yeah, taco bar. The cheese was from at least the last. Oh, Bev's probably getting mad at me now. Where is she? Melissa sent me an email over the weekend that one of the kids that was in my group was she was going camping with. Rocco, did you know Roundup Lake is on Route 82?
I pass it.
I used to go there in high school with my buddies.
44 as far east as anybody should ever go.
You need to go there. It's an awesome place. Anyway, the boy, she drove out to the campground, an 8th grader, and he kept saying what a cool guy I was. And that meant a lot to me, Melissa. And you also told me I'd be missed. Thank you. It's time to make a little confession. My kids are probably terrified right now, but Rachel, I don't love ancient history. I'm sorry. The Egyptians don't get this on the back of my neck as excited as American history. And while I'm at it, let my people read! And in that story about Melissa is something I want to tell all of you tonight, since you gave me this outstanding. What's that line Mickey does in Rocky? When he's in the church in this sacred place. Those of you that don't know that Rocky was a movie, maybe you should watch it tonight. The last 7 Rockies weren't that good. But never ever forget to give your colleague a compliment, or a student, or your boss. Never forget to do that. I had a quote from, what's that book by E.L. Konigsberg, Saturday?
Oh, View from Saturday?
Yeah, I left that one out. All right, Dwight. How many of you know what Dwight's first job at Chardon Middle School was? He was an aide in the ED class, working with Marty. He worked his way up. You know, I always wanted to ask you, you and Marty used to take like 10,000 computers home every week, and it's none of my business.
Most of them.
And another lesson there is Dwight's obviously found his passion, and you need to do that in education. You know, I taught 7th grade for a few years, and I liked that a lot, but 6th grade was really my home. And Dwight also found his work husband, Dan, who was my roommate, and a lot of you have asked, how was that? I might as well tell you, we pushed the beds together. He's a big guy, look at him. He sprawls out when he sleeps, too. So, you know, find the position you will truly love, even if, you know, maybe you gotta twist somebody's arm. And Dwight, thank you. You've always had nice things to say about the 9/11 things we've done. And I remember the day I walked in your room. It's not the room you're in now, and congratulated you when you and Rhonda were expecting your first. So what grade is she in now, Elaine?
She'll be a 6th grader.
Oh my goodness! The time, it flies by. Before I move on, Dan and Dwight spent a week together in Lowell, Massachusetts. Was that with families or not? Was that with spouses or without?
What happens in Lowell stays in Lowell.
And next to Dwight is Jeremy. I'm not sure all of you know this, but many years ago he was my student teacher. And his son Cooper is in my class this year. He's taller than if you put Jeremy on my shoulders and me together. So is that symmetry, Adrian? And Jeremy, one of the things I found when I was preparing this was what a nice note you left me when I was the perfect teacher to have worked with. Not everyone, you know, says that. Those of you that have worked with Tim. Brad's not here? All right, can you make a list of who's not here? Okay. Steve Patterson, when I formed a mini relay team, or a Relay for Life team, he was one of the first people to come on board. Now, I'm not making fun of Steve. He's yet to come to an event because the same weekend his son John has a baseball tournament. I told you to proof this speech. James. Anyway, Steve's a good dad. We know he grumbles, and he's now the oldest member of the staff, but
Thank goodness.
Steve's got me by 3 months, right? Ann proudly gave that roll up. Where's Ann? Thanks for coming in. I didn't forget you, by the way. You know, I'm not sure if Rocco did it so he could have more room to spread out the bus, but I ended up sitting with Bev a lot. Maybe he paid her, I don't know. Or Bev paid him, I don't know.
Shoot her ear off the whole time. I needed a break.
Here was the arrangement. Rocco, Bev, Tim, Nancy Taylor, and Maria Zabigan, who for 400 miles, and Mrs. Taylor. And then, Mrs. Taylor. Maria, let me sleep. At one point, she said Nancy was crabby. And we couldn't get mad. We were laughing so hard. But Bev's one of the, like a lot of you who I've worked with over the last 35 years. I still haven't told that story, but of when I first got hired. She's like an onion. There's all these layers, and I keep learning more about her. Her students told me she never yells. Is that true, Rachel? Although Jenna tells me different. And last spring I had a couple Kent State universities where I'm professor of education that were doing field work in her class, and I got to observe her, and man, she brings it every day. There's high expectations, kids are learning. She doesn't raise her voice, but she's very firm. She has one annoying habit, though. I can say this, right? It's my night. She wants everyone to be happy all the time. Come on, Bev. Vince, we shared. Vince introduced me to something new when you're at McGill's world-famous restaurant. You eat your dinner, then dessert, and then dinner again. I'm not sure you made it to that second dinner. But Bonzo's beloved by his students, and he always has the best ones. Darn it, Vince, excuse my language. About a month ago, when we went to that lovely schedule we had after those 19,000 snow days, and I told Jesse one day, I'm not leaving the living room. I'm reading this book, and I'm going to finish it, right? And Vince was adjusting the bell schedule, and I said, why are you doing that? He said, because no one else knows how. And then Nadine, I didn't see you a lot in D.C. I think we shared a meal at McGill's. Where's Nadine? We all know Nadine bakes for her kids, but I had study hall this year, first mod, and I have Tracy second semester, but Nadine comes in every day, darn it, excuse my language, and grabs 4 or 5 kids, and unlike Vince, she doesn't have the best students, and she said, I'm their last, what's the word?
Oh.
Before high school. One day, Matt Franklin tried to hide from you. That wasn't... Come on, Matt. Did I see Karen Fisher, or did I just imagine her?
Yeah.
Karen's still the funniest female on her staff. She wrote my speech in Spanish, and I had to, just to prove she could do it. And if I get through this, she's going to give me a sucker. And I wish you well, Karen, in the years ahead. I have something for all of you, but Karen particularly, as Dan finds more ways to torment you. Nikki, you are the go-to Google gal. I just made that up. Go-to Google gal. Thank you very much. As we all move forward, Nikki told me something very funny last year. It's the fake blondes give the real blondes a bad name. That's funny. Oh, did I offend someone? Kate, congratulations. I sure hope you're marrying a guy named Tom, because I messed up Steve's son's name. That is his name, right? Tom? She doesn't get too upset. She kind of lets things roll off her. As a coach, as a teacher, she was kind enough to come with us on the last 2 Hershey trips that we took and in D.C. And Cher. Were you Cher Nemeth before you were Cher Culleton? Was that? I'm sorry? Nemec. Okay, that's 2 mistakes for Tim. You were a tutor when you started at Chardon Middle School, and the best quote from Cher is, "Sometimes I forget I'm Asian if it wasn't for Tim." Cher's a twin, which you know is my obsession, one of my obsessions. I finally figured it out. Hey guys, I'll be on the back nine with you. I think I'm a twin, and maybe I was separated at birth. So upon retirement, I want to check that out. Cher did I have to tell this story, did a really nice thing for her mom. It was a magazine drive we used to do. Remember that guy? Mr. Schneeberger? I knew Kent would fit in. We had Mr. Schneeberger. We did this. We do an assembly every year and go through the prizes and what you could win. And Kent stands up and yells, "My homeroom will be your homeroom." I barely knew him. I'm not even sure he agreed to that. But Cher bought what she thought would be a great magazine for her mom. Is your mom called a refugee, or she left Vietnam? The magazine was called Vietnam, and Cher thought, culture and everything. It was the bloodiest, most horrific pictures of Vietnam. Good job, Cher. Salatino's not here either. Add his name to the list. Stephanie. You know why. All right. I was going to tell a story about a retirement dinner that happened many years ago at Bass Lake involving Helen Miller and Ron Wolf, but I can tell by some of you looking at your watches I shouldn't tell it. What's that?
Do tell.
Well, Ron Wolf was, let's see, who knows Ron? Laura? Oh, a few of you. Ron was intense, right? He was an intense guy. He taught health and PE, and he was talking about how quickly your career goes, which is true, it does, it flies by. And he said 5 years, then 10 years, and then you have a career, and at that point, who knows Helen Miller? Helen took about 10 years off of Jim's life. They taught PE together. Well, not together because she was never there. And she stood up and said, "And I have a cramp!" Bob Francis, you were crying, but no tears came out of your eyes. Back to Kate Isham for a minute. You interviewed at our school, and your interview got canceled. Kelly, we won't talk about what was going on that day. Steve was having, where is Steve? He had something was going on, and they had to cancel the interview. And then you came back. You drove 4.5 hours from Muskingum, Ohio, or somewhere. And I'm sorry, your phone. And when you came back, I said that's too bad they canceled your interview. And you were like, "Oh, no big deal." And that's how you handle things. You just kind of shrug them off. And is Jim Breen your husband's uncle? And Adria and Laura and a few of us that knew Jim and Jim DePofi, Jim Breen, great guy. And I remember at a retirement dinner many years ago, maybe one of my first, he talked about when he was a young man going to a retirement dinner for Mrs. Munn. So tonight when we leave, we blow an amp. We're all going to load up, rent a van, and go look for Mrs. Munn. I think it was on Route 422. Christy, I remember the day you walked into the building. You were an LD teacher, a young lady from New York. You lived in Lyndhurst, I believe, before you bought your home. On Emmett Drive?
Isn't that creepy?
I don't remember the address. I know your address in Opelika. I'm sorry. And you still love New York. That's getting a little old, but you know. I just learned last year at Ann and Bernie's retirement that Christy and Tim own land in Idaho. That's pretty cool. And she's going to Norway this summer. So I admire you for your courage and for your speed. Did I see Chris Cirillo earlier taking pictures of me? Chris Cirillo? Chris, you're hiding. You were a reading and language arts teacher when you were hired? And then over the years, you've taught many combinations of that, but really it's all the other things you've done with yearbook and coaching, and you and Michelle have been a team for how long now? 10 years? Yeah, now she's going to start crying. And how you were quietly a part of a lot of the things you've done, like mini relay and many of these. Oh, look at that! Bob Condon's not here either. I can skip over that. Let's see. All right, Julie, it's come to you. This is going to be a little hard. See, Barb has a way to handle me. She'll say, Tim, you're an idiot, or Tim, that won't work, or Tim, that looks hideous. And Julie kind of just is like we all know Kelly, right? She organizes everything, and I have the ideas, but you're kind of stuck with me now, because I'm not just going to go off into the sunset. And plus, I know where you live. Actually, I know where all of you live. I may not have driven by your house yet. Amanda, that really wasn't me on your street. It's a cul-de-sac. It was lost over by Lake Catholic. Is Christy here in here? Because I can save some time on that. No? All right, it's Kim Haddon's turn. Kim and Kent and Julie and I, Julie my wife, not Julie Kenny, went to New York for, you may have seen some pictures of Robin that we taught with, that was hired the same year as Barb. And by the way, when you and Robin were hired, you kind of revived Jerry. He was, all right, that's not nice to talk about someone that's not here. Where was I? Who was it? Robin? Wedding. Oh, and Kim, if you remember that day, you were not real good because you were leaving the boys, I think, for the first time. So you were crying a little, and as usual, I'm not real good with tears, so I kind of said, hey, how you doing? But then she quickly pulled herself together, hopped in my car, turned around to my wife and said, doesn't it suck when your husband's funny and everyone loves him? Nice job, Kim. The car wasn't even in reverse. That was a good weekend. Anybody that didn't have fun that weekend, it was their own damn fault. Excuse my language. Jim DePofi, for those of you that are maybe a little younger, 1984, the same year Julie and I got married. By the way, Julie and I will be married 30 years, two months from tonight, July 28th, May 28th. And I was 28 when I got married, and Marty was 28, so that's a good number for me, for those of you that... So Jim, back in 1984, you guys might not believe this, he was a god. He was a stud. He wore these cool sweatsuits. His hair was jet black. The guy had charisma. People loved him. And not people, everyone. Right, John? Not many folks have walked in the building, and the story about Jim is the same thing I think about my dad. My mother used to like to tell the story about my dad telling everyone, don't fall on the ice, don't fall, and then he fell. And she thought that was so funny, but what she missed in that story was that my dad always cared about other people, not himself, and that's Jim. The guy has no ego, none, zero, zip. Not as a teacher, a coach, or person. But if you say something about me, or Cheryl, or Kent, he'll be on you like a pit bull. And speaking of pit bulls, every story about Jim is him basically being kind of dumb, yeah. And it was one of the, I think it was maybe 1985, we spent, the guy's an idiot. We were at Madison High School for a week-long training on how to work with kids that were troubled. And you know those getting to know you activities? Where you have to do something silly, but you had to pick what person in your group was, what animal they reminded you of. And Jim thought this woman in his group was a wolverine. So unbeknownst to Jim, the next day the facilitator, was it Frank Scarano? Proceeded to tell everyone what they had chosen. Well, the woman who was the wolverine didn't think too kindly of that. And she said to Jim, every story about Jim, though, is a hillbilly voice. I don't know if she really talked like that, but she said, why did you call me a wolverine? And Jim, always quick on his feet, said, because they demand instant respect. And she said, I thank you for that. So the kids adored Jim, and they did these things in gym class they had never done, like play tennis, take tests. And the other thing about Jim is he's a student, whether it was learning about football. By the way, Jim here was hired as a PE teacher, and then about 5 days before school one year, they decided to make you a science teacher and a couple sections of health. So, you know, hey, he was young. That might have been the first gray hair you got. So you proceeded to spend every Sunday the rest of the year at school. And Jim DePofi, we've both been down in the valley a few times in each of our lives, but I'm leaving. You're going to have to carry on now. And you have lots of good days ahead of you. You have 2 young children who are wonderful. And Cheryl was in one of these pictures. More on that later. And Kathy Francis, you're not off the hook yet. So let's see, the facilitator, the Wolverine. There was also a student we had, I think this was when Bob and Kathy and Jim and I were a team, and her name was, she was born with the unfortunate name Sandra Jo Weber, and Jim kept calling her Sandy, and apparently Sandy did real well on this test, and her dad took exception to that. And a loud voice said, Sandra Jo! But I don't know if this was the best. It was the best, but did I say something different? Jim used to have this tradition, first at Geauga Lake and then at Hershey. If I were a younger man, I would do it. He would jump up on the picnic table in one fell swoop, and then we would see him do that. So, do all of you know where Jim's room is now? Is that room 200 or 222 or? Right. It ended up good. So I said, boss, let's see if you can still jump on the he jumped on it. Halfway up, though, the table went the other way. It was like he was surfing. The table went down, but he didn't. So he still got it. He didn't break it, Kelly, really. It's fine. But the funniest part was my reaction. His kids saw all of it. All right, Tracy Parabeck, you got to see me in study hall this year, and I asked a lot of annoying questions about music. And you put on some great concerts. I still miss the jazz dancers and Pat Miller. Let's see, Courtney, good luck to you as you move on to Hudson Middle School, but fair warning, we're coming after them! Power the pen! If you meet some guy named Mike there, walk the other way.
Yeah,
Definitely. Aaron Grubach and Colleen, who just left, you share something in common. You were both IS, you worked with me, as did Cher. And now you're kind of a half-time teacher, mom to Mikey and Kelsey, like Mike Kelsey. And I miss working with you, Aaron, and this is sort of when the angry Tim takes over. Why did we change that when I had an IS in my intervention class every day? Why am I a second-class citizen to language arts and math? Huh? Maggie, very nice of you to come. IAT, we didn't solve all our problems this year, but I did notice a quote from one of our, oh my God. Thanks, Barb. By the way, that was when we were mummifying chickens, and confession number 2, Rachel, I really never wanted to do that. I was really hoping those 19,000 snow days would deter you, but no. And that quote I read, the Boo Radley quote about neighbors, and I feel like that about you, Maggie. I think you listened to me more than I listened to you whenever we talked about a certain subject. And at your table is Madam Presidente, Tammy Segulin. Thank you for coming. Tammy came to my classes at Lakeland, where I serve as professor of education. And I always thought, and still do, that Tammy was a great representative for our school district. She's a great teacher, more, you remember that one woman in my class at Lakeland? She wanted to ask you the question about, oh, what about unions? You protect bad teachers. And Tammy said something about some principals need to have the V-drive to fire certain teachers. But I don't want to deter off my script too far here. Carol Caldwell's not here, but her partner Whiteman is. And Whiteman and I have this thing, West Side, which started at Hershey. There's a part of Hershey that is what's that called? A water park. And there was a guy in a Speedo and it said West Side on the back. So tonight when you can't sleep, think of that. Time for just a quick story. One of the things we did at St. Mary's at least 3 times, are we missing something here? We did a Flight 93 dinner, and for some unknown reason, we sent Evie and Suzanne back to the middle school. The alarms might have gone off. The police may have. Is Kelly listening? Suzanne's the only person in the room here who had a job, but she really didn't. Was that at a tanning salon?
She showed up.
Yes.
And Evie, Colleen, thank you for coming, and Mara, the 3 of you do not have an easy job by a long shot. And Evie, you probably cry more than Michelle, so I'm not going to look at you. And I will say, confession time, I've enjoyed working with you and most of your students. Maybe all but one. Mary Elizabeth, you really have helped us a lot with Mini Relay, and the week of Mini Relay, you were absent one day, and I was falling apart. I was chasing myself like a dog in its tail. And Patty, you've helped us. You were on our Relay for Life team from the beginning. We worked together at one time, didn't we? Was it Bob and Kathy and Jim, and you were the reading teacher, and you too have a Kelsey. So we have 3 Kelseys here. Kelsey Bowens, Kelsey Pinkard, Kelsey Grubach. And like one of the people in the room, you've made some changes from reading to librarian, now you're technology. Do you have a new title next year?
Well, I'm going to take over your title.
Mayor of 6th grade. Bob Francis, everyone, 1990. He came out of, Kathy, I forgot to tell you, I met Mike Torelli on the DC trip. Yeah, from Lamuth. Yeah, and I learned that Bob was little Bobby Francis then, which is a little bit like little Jerry Seinfeld, if you've seen that episode with Kramer. And 1990, Jim DePofi and I are standing in the high school cafeteria. Remember we used to do our first meeting there? How many of you remember that? No, Heather, you too. And I said, Jim, we got to get this guy on our side. He's got to be one of us. And he said, I think he already is. And Bob was hired. There were 5 of us. I think I have the names right here. Ann, check me. It was Ann, Tim, that's me, Pat Mantini, Fran DeVoke, and Bob. And we taught in a 3-mod block, reading, language arts, and social studies. We were ahead of the learning curve. We were kicking ass all over Northeast Ohio. We won awards. All right, I made that part up. Julie Kenny, everyone. And Bob, like from day one, taught himself to be a coach. Football, softball, wrestling. And like a lot of the people here, Bob, you left me. You were assistant principal for a year. Then you went to the high school as the AD. And all those years, though, you and Kathy have remained friends, I think, right? So I'm confident I'll be able to remain friends with many of you in my retirement. Plus, I know where all of you live. And one of the comments up here, I was telling Ellen Andre, everyone, that Liz, and her married name is Curtis, submitted something here about being on the team with Bob, Jim, Tim, Kathy. Remember that, Liz Andre? Those were good times. And all of you that have been on a team, you know there's teams and then there's teams that really gel, right? And I feel like my team this year, we didn't have time. For the first 2 weeks, I kept wondering why Michelle was coming to our team meetings. And then why was Bob sitting in that room over there? Good times. So how many stories should I tell about Kathy and Bob? I can see some of you are yawning there. Well, can you imagine being a young teacher right out of college, and you're on a team with moi and Jim and Bob, and it's football season? I kept telling her there really are two other guys on our team. It's just, football season. And Bob and Kathy were dating for a while before Jim and I knew it, because we're both idiots. We're dumb. And, Bob told me at Christmas that year, and Kathy told Jim at the same time, and I was like, Bob, I'm not your dad. You're allowed to do what you want. And then Bob left us, right, became assistant principal, and we had a sub who's in some of these pictures. Her name was Cheryl Brown, and for the first 4 months of the school year, Kathy tried with all she could to fix up Jim and Cheryl, but it was football season. And Jim, one day Cheryl came in his room, and like a lot of first-year teachers, she was really upset. How many of you first-year teachers cried your first year? How many of you still cry? And Cheryl came in his room and just kind of wanted to, vent a little and cry. And Jim's like, "Tribe's on at 3 o'clock." That was the year we were in the playoffs, 95. Every story about Jim is like that. That's what makes him great, though. And Rachel, my little jelly donut, what a year it has been. We met, that's what Rachel's sister calls her, Janine. Janine Zappatelli. I know where she lives, too. We met a couple times over the summer, and I freaked her out a little. I don't know. Janine's weird. But Rachel, you probably don't remember this. One of the first things you told me was, not every kid loves social studies. And I was so impressed by that, because they don't. They don't all love science or math, Latin, art history. But goodness, what a ride it has been, Rachel. I was hoping to just, take it slow this year, sleep my planning period away, take a lot of sick days. So September, I knew I was in trouble. I get a text from her. It says, "I'm going to send you something in a minute," meaning an email. Okay, that came at 2:30, because I didn't sleep, because I was expecting something from Rachel. It was 2:30. So, all right, I already mentioned the chickens, right? Rachel, all the best to you as you and Clay begin your life together, but really, really try to get some sleep. And I've learned far more from you this year than I was able to teach you. So that whole mentoring thing, that's a little bit. What do you think of this part? It's a pimp. Pimping. Adria, we worked together for a lot of years, right? I've always been impressed by a couple things that you do. One is you greet each and every kid at the door, every day. And I've noticed since I've become a professor of education that you do these conferences at the end of the year with kids that aren't going to quite make it in advanced math, right, Vince? A lot of discussions. And you don't have to do that, but you do it, and you bring the kid in, and you bring their parents. Kudos to you. And 2 weeks ago at Mini Relay, my youngest daughter, Jessie, came home and said, one of the teachers came up and introduced herself and asked about me. I said, that had to have been Adria. And that's the kind of person you are. Plus, I think it was when you were in 6th grade, the first time. Well, you never really left.
No, remember I had the lunch.
I think that was when we started the game, Would You Rather? Would you rather be stuck on an elevator with... All right. Shannon, I feel like that book that was written, I Hardly Got to Know You. Wasn't that a book about JFK? Johnny, We Hardly Knew You? We sure tried to solve a lot of problems. In fact, we still are. Right up to the end. But I want to thank Dr. Mike Hanlon. He's canceled school tomorrow. Because of the okay. All right, Heather Cagnati. I always thought you were, I don't know, aloof, but really you just couldn't wait to get home. And why not? Big Nick. He's a good-looking guy. And really, your son Nicky is very cute. And you're a good IS because you just quietly take care of stuff, doesn't you? And we're all beautiful people here, right? And there's some other things you call us, but this is a sacred place. And speaking of beautiful people, is there something wrong with me that my best memories are lunch? Oh my Buddha. Rachel, you're an idiot when you stay in your room and don't come home. Oh, sorry. Jim's the only idiot here. That was my chance to rant and laugh and cry and then laugh some more, right? And Kathleen Haverly. And here's the funny thing about working in a school as big as ours. You don't get to know some people. Jerry told me once, I don't know Bev Mizek. She's my department head, but I don't know her. I said, Jerry, walk upstairs, talk to her. And Kathleen is very, very funny, and she's quick. I'm not real proud of this, but one day in March, it was these last stay until 3 o'clock. I look at the clock about 2:45, and I just start drooling. And I have a smaller class, and they're fairly independent. And I sent one of my better students. I said, ask Mrs. Haverly when the next MGK concert is. So he comes, and I knew right away I picked the right kid. He was out the door before I had the message on him. Comes back and says, she's wearing a grill to the concert. I said, okay, ask her what hat she's wearing. He comes back. She's wearing the same one as last time, but it's got more bling. This went on for like a half hour. So glad I wasn't being observed that day. Kathleen, what was that you taught at the high school? MH, cross-categorical, DH? We've had so many changes. It's nice Ann and Bernie are with us tonight. Jessie didn't understand why she signed the card Kinzer, Ann, which is one of the great, great stories of all time. They started printing our schedules, and for some reason they put our first names on it. And there's 4 kids wandering around the first day. I think it might have actually been Mantini. He said, where are you going? He goes, I'm looking for Kinzer, Ann. Rocco, you still call her that, right? Kinzer, Ann. You can't make up ones. But I think that team was when you came. Was it Bernie, Ann, Adria, Cher? Who am I missing? Kathleen. And I thought that's a nice group. They're meeting together, and we had several teams, and you made reference to that. I believe it's a veiled reference. Is that the term? The evil reign.
Wasn't so veiled.
But Kathleen's kept me on my toes and bailed me out more than once. You guys don't need to know those stories, but she'll listen to my ideas. Unlike Barb, will say, Tim, you're an idiot too. That looks hideous. I already said that earlier, didn't I? And Amanda, you're not done yet either. You just had to add this. When we were all starting that maddening thing called OTES, someone told me, Nadine, you spent 10 hours on your, what's that first thing we did? I was like, she's crazy. Well, Kelsey, do you remember the weekend I was doing that? I was throwing stuff in the house, and she said, Dad, you survived a shooting. I think you can handle this. Anyway, Kelly did a walkthrough in Amanda's room, and the kids weren't real good that day. And Amanda said, they were horrible, except she put a word in front of horrible. Speaking of Barb and Kathleen, one night we were talking about teams and how you get to work with someone, and I was telling Amanda that Barb and Kathleen didn't always work together, and she said, well, they're a power couple. More on working together. I'm almost done here. You guys want me to just cut it short?
No, go ahead.
Cut the cake. I was thinking about how many of you had another life before you became teachers. Barb, you were a salesperson. Vince, you did something at the airport. I don't know if you were a drug mule. customs. Melissa, did you work in a bank? Is that where you met Mike? No. Okay. Dan was a business owner. Jeremy, you were a plumber, and probably some others I'm forgetting. But Barb already told the story about Eric. I'd forgotten Eric K. What's his last name? E-R-I-K.
ARIC.
Oh, maybe my memory isn't that good. But I'm thinking Barb and I must have crossed paths at some time. She kind of mentioned that. She lived in South Euclid. I lived in Lyndhurst. She went to Heights. I went to Brush. She went to John Carroll. Was that for a year or 3 weeks?
2 weeks was at
Purdue.
Purdue. Then I went to John.
When you went around on your bike getting the professors to sign up. You worked as an usher at Front Row. I went to many shows there, and Barb lived on where Front Row was, right? Remember every party, Kent would tell people that we're standing where Front Row, and boy, did we have some good parties there. And I think the best was the one you mentioned, the summer after the name that shall not be spoken left. And a lot of people came. Kelly, I remember you had too much sun. You had just come back from somewhere. Yeah, and we met this young man named Rocco Sciarabo for the first time. And we'll get to that in a moment. You know I have to tell that story. But, there's a quote in Christmas Story I never can quite tell about the father. Some artist worked in oil, some in sculpture. Watching Barb work with the kid in the hallway conferencing is just a thing of beauty. She doesn't raise her voice. She's very direct. And sometimes we even teamed up, that good cop, bad cop. And Kathleen last year, she was good cop. I'm like, what the hell's with that? You're the bad cop. Yeah. The one year, Jay, you were there, and the kid broke the bed in Hershey, right? And he was in Suzanne's group, and we had begun an investigation. And Barb was like, why didn't you tell me? And I turned to Jay, and I said, yeah, that's what she does best. She's the closer. And your kids are a little bit older than mine, so all those life experiences as they went through high school, college, and beyond. And Lori Strickland, confession number 3, I won't miss the head lice presentation. But you were a great help to me when we started the Hershey trip, because it never occurred to me kids might be on medication that they didn't take at school. Hello? And then over the years, and for Bev now, I think you've got that down to a science. And that was so much fun to go this year, besides McGill's, to just get on the bus and get handed a bag. And Rocco, you had a lot of medication. I'm not sure about that. Okay. Lisa Longcar is here. When did you start, Lisa? In October? September. And she still doesn't get Kent because he'll come up and say, Lisa. And then she'll hear him going down the hall going, Lisa! Lisa! Which is really one of Kent's gifts. Not everyone, some of you still don't get it. He's very profound, isn't he? He says some funny things, but they're actually very funny. And we had a great time in New York that summer, didn't we? We drove 6,000 miles in 3 days for a 4-hour wedding, but man, was it a wedding. And I said to Barb after, I said, no one really was too out of control. And you said, artists came very close.
Artist was close.
You almost threw up in his $600 suit.
Julie was
Julie's behind you.
the water.
Oh, that's right.
With her bridesmaid dress on. Or was it on the deck?
I never was close to throwing up.
We're busted.
Kelly and Rocco, you might not believe this, but many times this year people come up to me and say, I don't blame them. It's not their fault. And Kelly, you walked into a not so enviable position. You worked for the name that shall not be spoken at the end of his reign of terror for 1 year, and then you kind of inherited Steve, and now he's your boss again. Is that not cool? All right, I walked into that. I better walk out. We all know Steve never lets you make a decision. I hope he does now. And then You hired Rocco, you and Barb, and who was the third person on this? Newman? Nice of her to show up. Don't tell her that, Michelle. I love her dearly. Remember when you got hired? You went through about 4 of these? He was sweating so badly? So that was 2008, correct? And then you worked with me 1 year in 6th grade, and then because of your affiliation with me, it was thought you would be a better fit in 8th grade. You're not the first person that left me, and you're leaving again. We wish you and Kara all the best as you begin a new adventure and a family. And there was a quote up here from you. You taught me to text a man in his 50s. And Kelly, our last OTES meeting, I don't even remember what that's called. Is that the final post-conference? I don't have to remember all this. But there's section 3, there's a part about professional, no, because we know Tim's numbers weren't that good. No, you read section 3 and you said that you felt like you knew me, which I'm pleased you read that because it was 5 pages. So, in conclusion, I wish I could stand up here and tell you that this has been a great year, but in some ways, it was the best of times. In other ways, it was the worst of times. And what's that book, Tale of Two Cities, some of these younger people should read? London and Paris, the French Revolution. I just remember sitting in the LGIR when we were learning about OTES the first time, and I was getting so excited. And this isn't a smooth transition, but I was thinking, since I've become a middle school educator as a college professor, that there's 3 things that separate a middle school from a junior high. A, teams of teachers. 2, interdisciplinary units. When's the last time we did one of those? Come on, those were fun. Remember, Bob, the chocolates? Jim? Kathy? Throw a unit together. And then a daily advisory period, which I thought ICE was, but I would look up some days and there were no kids left in my room. Half went to Amanda, half to Kathleen, and then the other ones were playing chess in Tracy's room. What the hell's with that? So, I don't know what happened, along the way with ICE and working with kids and all that, and I'm not sure how we're going to get that back. But what I want all of you to do when you get home tonight, and it's a nice night, right? You can roll up your windows, those of you that don't have air, and just open your window, okay? If you have a screen, open it, and I want you to yell something out so your neighbors hear you. We're mad as hell, and we're not going to take this anymore. Bernie, you've been crying all night. Do any of you know anyone with a bigger heart than Bernie Greaves? Miss you. Rachel, you're okay, but... And over the last 35 years, there's just some things I couldn't compromise on. And I won't back down. I just won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell. I won't back down. I'll stand my ground. I won't be turned around. And I'll keep this world, at least the one I know, from dragging me down. I'm going to stand my ground, and I won't back down. And how many of you have ever gone home and tried to just shut it off? It doesn't work, Some nights I get a head-on collision. I'm smoking in my guts, man. I'm caught in a crossfire, and I don't understand. But there's one thing I know for sure. I don't give a damn for the same old played-out scenes. I don't give a damn for just the in-betweens. I want the heart, the soul. I want control right now. Talk about a dream. I want to make it real. Let my people read! I feel like everything in my life is a circle. It's symmetrical. I had a song I wanted to do. I even had copies for all of you. Sorry, Kelly, I made some extra copies. Confession number 4, during the reign of terror, someone in this room, it might have been Ken, figured out you could punch in 0000 and get copies galore. One day someone said to me, "Tim, are you doing that?" I think that was Kent. How many of you know this good old song? Oh, listen to the jingle, the rumble, and the roar. As your guides along the woodlands, through the hills and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of her engine, hear that lonesome hobo's call. We're traveling through the jungles. Wash Cannonball. Did you know that was a mythical train? It's not a real train. And did you know when I retire next Friday, my last day when I walk out of the middle school, it's the 70th anniversary of what? D-Day. Hello, Dwight. Come on, man.
I had zoned out. I was still singing that song.
Well, speaking of singing that song, I was reading this on my porch last night. My neighbors were complaining because I threw my empties on the lawn. Julie wanted to put the screens in, and I said, I'm under a lot of stress. How many of you know who General Jimmy Doolittle is? After Pearl Harbor, we decided to make an attack on Japan, and he led it, right? And one of the fellows that rode with him was getting so nervous because they found out they might not have enough fuel to make it back to China after they bombed Japan. And he was tapping his fingers, and what was he tapping his fingers to? Wabash Cannonball. So, and then tonight I come here and there's a quote from Churchill on the cake. And I say to you tonight, you know, I want you guys to grab something back. I'm not sure what it is, but when you go home, yell out your window. We should